we're talking to mid-market CIOs in reference to their efforts in the world of AI. Our special guest today is Gene Johnson. Gene, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah, hi. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me today. My name is Jean Johnson. I am a director of IT for a mid-market company in the manufacturing distribution space. And I have kind of stumbled into IT over my career, started out over on the business side, and throughout the years come up through applications and kind of sat on both the consulting and business side of things. So I'm really excited to talk AI today with you guys.
One of the neat things about your background, Gene, is that, like you said, you've come from a multivariate background, right? You come from the consulting side of the house, so you know how to work with consulting firms, their pitfalls, the positives, the negatives of working with consulting firms. But you didn't come to IT through a traditional route, right? You came through the business side of the house and then came into IT. I was kind of curious from your standpoint, Gene, what you think some of those business lessons taught you in terms of being a really good IT exec, but also understanding the other parts of the organization as well from their language.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's invaluable. And the best description I've ever been able to come up with is if we think back to kind of the 90s, the whole programmer analyst position that we all worked with over the years, and how those individuals had no choice but to understand the business while they're creating solutions for the business.
Mhm.
And, I kind of feel like as we went into the early 2000s, we lost sight of that as we
Yeah.
separated those roles. And so I think we have a whole cohort of individuals similar to myself with this kind of background where started out in the business side, maybe became a subject matter expert or did some kind of participation in a big project and really developed a love for it because that you have to love it, right? You have to love it. And if you don't, you're going to suffer. And who wants to do that?
Yeah. One of the things Richard and I both have come across in our careers as well is that inevitably the best chief information officers that I'm just kind of speaking for you here, Rich, but I'm willing to bet you'll agree with me. Some of the best CIOs that we work with are people that have that more global mindset of, okay, this is when production and distribution says this is what they mean. Or when finance says this is what they mean. Or when ops says this is what they actually mean. And it's been kind of neat to see that with your career. One of the reasons why I'm kind of curious, and Richard, you were going to say something.
I was gonna say, Gene, I think the interesting, progression that you had in your career is coming from the business side where you and I and I'm gonna assume something here, where you look at the solution before you look at how to you s find the tools to find that solution. Um, and you've been in the seat of the person that you're trying to solve that challenge for. And that is, I find, light years above other leaders who come it from a theoretical or from a IT perspective, because at the end of the day, the business drives the challenges. And if
Mhm.
you have been in that seat and you can parlay that into a technical solution, I think you're that much more powerful. Would you agree with that?
I would. And I'm biased, of course, because it is my background, but I do feel like coming up through applications gives you that advantage. Like I've spent 20 years in the ERP space as I've grown up through IT, and you have no choice but to learn the business when you're coming up in
Right.
in the ERP space. And so it really does, it gives you more credence, it gives you more, you can gain respect more easily from your colleagues at at all the levels throughout the organization, whether it's the folks that you're working with directly to just get the work done, like the people who have the fingers on the keyboards, but then also translating it to how you can explain it to the boardroom, how you can explain it to the
Right.
executive team, and really get the buy-in that you need. But if you can speak business and you're not just talking about the solutions and you're not talking about all the nerdy stuff, like
Right.
it just it just goes so much further to, you know, IT earning the seat at the table that it really needs to have to make sure that we're delivering the solutions that enable the business. We're delivering the solutions that match and marry up with the strategy that the business has. If you're
Right.
not connected, then you're not going to be able to get there. But you have to earn it. Like you have to earn that seat at the table.
Yeah, it creates credibility, it creates trust, which in turn spins the value wheel.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this kind of leads to one of the biggest topics that you and I discussed, Gene, when we first started talking about this and kind of preparing for this, is you have a very unique ability to speak CFO and to really understand finance from the finance point of view. And I think one of the things that mid-market CIOs kind of struggle with is really understanding finance and what the CFO is really looking for when it comes to project A, B, or C. Obviously, AI is a huge component of these upcoming projects. But I was wondering if you could, when we're when you're looking at budgeting for projects like AI projects or just like an ERP projects, what does a CFO actually ask for when it comes to AI proposals? So I think there's this disconnect between what people in IT think the organization wants when it comes to AI and the language of what the CFO is really, what they're really asking for and what they're really wanting. You mind kind of diving into that a little bit? Because you have a really unique perspective throughout your history of
Yeah.
being able to speak CFO to a
Yeah.
CFO.
I mean, part of it is I've been really lucky to work with some great CFOs throughout my career and people who were interested in helping me understand what it really takes, what we want to look at, how we want to view things. And I've listened over the years. I think, my CFO and I talk right now about AI projects and again, any project, because while we're talking about AI today, this isn't any different, right? The big difference is the dollar values are getting bigger and bigger. But ultimately, the CFO wants, like, the value of a dollar is more today than it is tomorrow. So what can you do to demonstrate to your CFO how, like, what's the materiality of this project that you're doing? And it's not just about what does it cost? Like, what
Mm.
are we getting for it? Are we going to be able to, I mean, you know, it's the thing in the room that everybody's thinking about. Like, I'm going to cut headcount. Are we going to cut headcount? Are we going to save time? Are we going to generate revenue? The CFO wants to know that, and the CFO wants to know how quickly you can do that. Your
Right.
CFO doesn't want to invest $3 million in an AI project and not see the benefit of it for 3 years, because every day that goes by that you're not getting benefit, you're getting less and less benefit. That dollar is worth less. Um, is- so it's important to think about it that way. I think that's probably the first way I look at it.
You mind diving into that a little bit more, Gene? Because one of the things I think that people struggle with is this whole idea of time value of money. In that,
Mhm.
okay, if you're going to have a 3-year time horizon on return on that invested dollar, I think oftentimes people struggle with that and they'd say, okay, we need to reduce that time. So the return on that invested capital is 6 months or 9 months as opposed to 3 years. And then corners get cut to reach that
Yeah.
estimated return on that invested capital, which leads to this vicious circle, right? Where, okay, if we were to spend more time, we would get X plus this percentage in terms of ROI and that invested capital. But there's pressure to produce results in 6 months, which causes this kind of, like I said, this vicious circle. How do you suggest if you look at um, people who are struggling with that, this idea of, okay, we got to compress our ROI time. There's things that are going to be missed. How do because you've had this happen where, okay, we want to have this happen in 6 months, but it's not going to.
Yeah.
And then that honesty in terms um, of being able to really kind of be honest in terms of, okay, it's going to take this amount of time.
Yeah. I think it's a really great question. And the way I think about it, I think about it in a couple of ways, but the main way that I would relate it back to is if we think about agile software development and the way that we structure projects based on an MVP or a pilot, I think that when we look at AI projects, we've got to look at it through that lens. And I think as a program, we look at it as a balance of quick wins and longer term projects. But when we look at those longer term projects, if we want to compress that time to value, we don't cut corners. We
Mhm.
look at it more like, what are the building blocks that we need to get from A to Z, right? So instead of A to Z in one project, it's A to B, B to C. So how can I take, let's say I have 5 projects that are all dealing with, customer attribution and revenue generation. They're all going to end up with the same data set, for example. You're looking at the same data. So what can I do to get an incremental gain each time I add another one of those to it, to be able to say, okay, I'm going to tackle this small piece right now. I'm going to make sure that my data is as crisp as I need it to be. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I'm going to be able to show you some value in 4 to 6 months because this is a smaller project. And hey, by the way, I'm going to earn the right to fund the next project with the output that I get. And the next project, I'm going to be able to build on something I've already built. So it's not going to cost you as much. And then in another 4 to 6 months, you're going to get more benefit. And so you really have to you've got to zoom out and look at your roadmap as a whole to be able to group those projects together and manage that as a program, not as one big lump.
I like that because I was going to ask you. I was going to. Am I reverberating again?
Just a little bit, but that's okay.
Happened last time. I'm sorry, but
That's all right.
Gene, I was going to ask you. How should leaders balance quick AI wins with the long-term work around data governance, strategy, and then change management? And I think you touched on that, but that would be an interesting question to answer.
Yeah. I mean, I think the benefit of the quick win, besides the obvious quick of it, but I think the benefit of the quick win is you can show the business that things can be done and
Right.
you can model what that process looks like. It helps you then be able to say, hey, it helps you model the governance, right? We're going to document things. We're going to make sure that everything is scalable. We're going to make sure that it's secure. We're going to make sure that we've got, um, you know, a good idea of what the before and after is going to look like, including the metrics that we're going to use to measure it. But because it's in this very small chunk and those are going to be the projects that are more self-contained that don't really fit into a program, right? But you can say, hey, this is how we do it. This is the process that we follow. So people start to get used to what that looks like. And then it keeps their appetite wet too, right?
Yeah.
Because you go to somebody with a 3-year project and they're not they're going to be really excited at the beginning, but because there's 8 months of research and development being done, they're going to lose interest. So I think that, when I think about quick wins, I think about things that are more self-contained. I think about things that demonstrate, like, you've got automation and efficiency gains that are usually what you're going to get from the quick wins. And the bigger projects are going to be the ones that are going to be your revenue generators.
Right. Right.
That's what we're seeing where I'm at as far as like what the roadmap looks like and how we're approaching it. There definitely seems to be this real leaning toward automation on the small side.
Yeah. And then as you create those wins or you move that automation forward, what are you seeing in your user community? Maybe not yours specifically, but from your cohorts, um, the change management aspect and the adoption of the technology or the automation. Is there fear? Is there open arms? How is it being received?
It's a real mixed bag in what I'm experiencing. So you've got the groups that are always kind of leaning into technology anyway, and those groups are going to be your adopters. They're going to be your evangelists. I think about some of the projects we're working on and you know, our SIOP, our system, our sales inventory and operations planning team, like they're very deep into the data. They're very deep into the weeds of it. And so they're highly receptive of the AI projects. They're interested, they're pushing it.
Right, right.
Then you've got some other folks where it's more automation based when you look at some of the accounting disciplines like accounts receivable and accounts payable, there's a lot of trepidation because there is a lot of worry that is this going to take my job away?
Right.
And, and Richard, to your point, like this is where change management becomes critically important. And the way that as leaders, we speak to our users and we speak to our employees and we talk about, you know, this is a gain because you're going to be able to, and whatever that might be,
Right.
right? So we can service our customers faster. We can get to the things that we haven't been able to get to. We can spend time solving problems instead of generating reports. You know, change management isn't any different with AI projects than ERP projects, than any
Right.
other technology that we're doing. And how well we do with it is really, you've got to make it part of the culture at the company.
Right. And then each position can move and morph and excel with that adoption and become more valuable to the org, but you've got to continually upgrade your skill set.
You do, and that's where those quick wins come in too,
Yeah.
right? Like if you can demonstrate to a particular team that this small little project made their life so much better, then you start to build those evangelists, right? You got to get that embedded into the business. And we're talking right now of how do we identify the AI champions within the business that aren't just sitting on the IT team, right? We want to make this kind of a community sourced situation and scheme to build that support. So, I might be talking to Tom one day and Tom's like, "Oh yeah, let me run that through this tool I did." And I say, "Oh, that's really cool. How'd you do that?" And then Tom can tell me the story about how he got this AI
Right.
tool and how he worked with somebody to do it.
You bring up a really fascinating point. I think this strikes home with um, a lot of what we're finding from the people that we interview is that the importance of those quick wins and eating the elephant one bite at a time, right? I think so often the CEO of an organization comes to their direct report saying, I heard that we can have a 70% gain of this, a 90% decrease of this, and we're going to reduce our headcount by 50%.
Mm.
Go do it, right? When in actuality, none of those things are really um, able to happen without incremental change to get there. One of the more interesting comments that we've heard so far is that if you're looking at AI clearly just from the lens of headcount reduction, you're looking at it through the wrong lens.
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious if you kind of concur with that comment and the importance of quick wins throughout that cycle. And you're not going to get a 90% decrease of this, a 60% increase of this, a 40% decrease of that in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's a tough conversation to have because it is the reality of it is that your CEO doesn't want to hear that what
Mhm.
they're being told by the consultants that they talk to isn't really based in reality.
Right.
Um, and so as as technology leaders, I think we have to challenge ourselves to put yourself in the CEO seat. Think about what it's like when your CEO is talking to the board and having to explain why I'm in a company that's private equity held, so all of our sister companies are having the AI conversations as well. And as soon as one of them is able to say to the board, "Hey, we cut headcount by X%," then the expectation becomes all of the platform
Mhm.
companies become cutting headcount by that. So, you know, it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. And I don't like, to me, it's not a matter of balancing quick wins in the larger program. I think it's a matter of, um, you know, I guess I would say, I think it's a matter of taking the time to understand what areas of the business are maybe overloaded with people with functions that can do it. And that's where that having a technology team that's stacked with people who understand business and can speak well and have those
Yep.
good relationships where you can start to sit in and say, okay, let's do some time studies. Let's really get an idea of what's going on here. And working with the leaders of those functions to say, this is going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be asked to cut heads. We all are. What are you not getting to? So how can we keep that in mind as we're designing this
Mm.
so that we can maybe preserve some of what could make you even better?
I like that comment of making things even better. Because if you don't mind, if we could pivot off of that a little bit, one of the kind of main points I thought would be neat to discuss with you today is what really defines a worthy project. And I think you hit it right on the head in terms of this is going to make this process or this task that you do on a weekly basis better. You mind walking me through that a little bit? And
Sure.
if you were to coach a mid-market CIO that's listening to this, how would you coach them on this is a worthy project because X, Y, Z, A, B, or C?
Yeah. I would think about it, and I do think about it through one of three lenses is really kind of the starting point for me. What is this going to do? Is this project going to impact my customers in a positive way? Am I going to be easier to do business with? Because that's all of our goal. That should be all of our goals,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
How can my company be the easiest company to do business with? I don't want my customers to have to think about who to call. I want them to just call me. Second lens is, what am I doing to make myself more efficient? Is this project going to make us more efficient? That's the headcount conversation, but it's not just that. It's what am I not getting to? Imagine your FP&A team having to manually fill stuff out in Excel every week because your analytics isn't quite where it needs to be. Like, I want them spending time doing analysis, honing the forecast, getting that as accurate as possible and not messing with Excel. So where am I getting efficiencies by doing this project? And then finally, like, what is the value? Like, how do I increase my revenue with this project? And that one's going to be more elusive. That's going to be harder because your sales guys are going to be committing to all sorts of things and it's going to be hard to measure. So you've got to make sure your metrics are crisp on that.
Hmm.
But those are the three things that I really think if I have to categorize the requests that are in my backlog, whether it's AI or not, those are the lenses that I look through at first. And if I can't tick one or more of those boxes, it's probably not a working project.
Gotcha. It's interesting you mentioned the customer gains, right? And making yourself the least hassles. Because we all like, okay, you've come into this throughout your career, Gene, and Richard and I both have come into this too. When it comes to IT vendors, there
Mm-hmm.
are some that are real pain in the neck.
Mm-hmm.
That if you had an alternative, you would choose an alternative.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm willing to bet the same thing is with you, Gene, and that whether it be IT vendors, whether it be at your company, various different vendors from raw materials, there are some that are easy to work with and you can use as
Yeah.
a model to help your company grow. It's like, if we were like ABC company, we send in an order for this amount of stainless steel or this material or that material. It's here by Friday. They send us an invoice. We pay that. They're not bothering us. Um, I'm willing to bet there's probably people listening to this that have a supplier that's like that. I'm willing to bet you probably have taken that as a model in some cases for some of the things that you've implemented, whether it be AI or ERP or whatever project.
Yeah. And I think I've probably done it more on this one's a real pain to work with. What do I wish that they could do differently?
Ah,
So now you've given me an idea to think about it from a different way, which is like, who do I really enjoy doing business with? And I think it's a really good point as we're having conversations with our business counterparts. How do we use that example, Tom, as a way to frame the conversation? Like, I'm trying to come up with a way to serve our customers better.
mhm.
Tell me about somebody that you work with that you're like, this is amazing. This is the way that we should do business. And maybe that's in your work life and maybe that's in your private life. We have a lot of conversations, as I'm sure many companies do in the distribution space of comparing ourselves to Amazon, right?
Mhm.
How do we, I go on Amazon and I put my order in and I have it the next day on my porch when I wake up in the morning. That's great. Where's the, for your company, what's the practicality of it? But how do we use those real life examples to inform ourselves of what is possible? Sometimes we don't know. Sometimes we don't know what's possible.
And not to monopolize this part of the conversation there, Richard. So feel free to jump in if there's a quick question you want to add
No,
here,
I like the thread you guys are going down.
because this goes right back to being able to speak CFO, doesn't it? Because if you talk about your CFO in particular, what are his or her biggest concerns? Probably a big one is customer churn, right? Because if you're a CFO, you're looking at your income and your revenue, you're trying to predict, okay, this has been a steady payer for years, right? We got to hold on to that because these other payers are at risk in terms of default, or heaven forbid there starts to become a bankruptcy crisis. CNBC was just talking about this the other day in terms of the private credit challenge that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of companies are having. So that could be
Yep.
something that trickles down, right? It's not at critical path right now, but Steve Eisman, who was the guy behind the great short in the housing market, is starting to say alarms. Okay, there's challenges in the private credit market. So if you look across your customers, there's a lot of them that probably have private credit. If there starts to be a shakeout there, what's the risk in terms of receivables, right? So the way you're framing this, Gene, hits right on in terms of, okay, those customers that we've had for 5, 10, 15 years, what are we doing something to take advantage? Are we not valuing them the way we should? Because those are your steady payers that you want. Because
Yeah.
let's say if the private credit market really starts to have some challenges, there's going to be a healthy amount of your customers that are in that boat. That, okay, now
Correct.
that receivables at risk. So this kind of goes
Correct.
full circle in terms of your ability to speak finance to your finance folks and being able to
It
really kind of justify projects that CFO is going to say, yes, let's do that because I'm worried about this.
correct. And I think it also, it plays into that, and it plays into managing like topics as a program, for example. So, customer churn, um, wallet share, these are all pieces that we can use AI tools both within our own data and seeking data outside to try to get those alerts and is try to get early warning signs. And
Mhm.
that's a big conversation. I mean, that is one of the early projects that we're investing in, is related to how do we understand our customers better. And there's a lot of different aspects to that, and
Mhm.
you can't tackle it all at the same time. Speaking CFO, and I like the way you put that. um it helps. It's going to help you put the pieces together, right? Because the folks in sales and marketing who want to protect and grow the revenue, protect what we have, grow the revenue with what we don't have, grow the market share, grow the wallet share, they're looking at just a little piece of it. The CFO is looking at they're looking at another piece of it. And if I can be the bridge
Mhm.
to bridge the pieces that these two are talking about, then we're going to have a more powerful solution. We're going to have a better solution, and everybody's going to be happy. And hey, by the way, I'm going to be able to measure the results, which is what CFO wants. CFO wants measurable results, because then we can forecast on it. We can deliver that over to our FP&A team. We get better forecasts. And so it all kind of starts to build. And if you can figure out a way to draw the picture,
Mhm.
then you're going to start getting the funding for these projects.
And so, Gene, on that note, what's the most impactful project you've worked out over, say, the last year, and what made it stand out to you and your org?
Yeah. So, in full transparency, we're still pretty early in our AI journey. We've had a couple of small projects coming through that were really isolated to some teams. The ones that we are, the ones where we're starting to see some benefits are a lot of investment that we've put into inventory and operations planning, and using the data that we already have to automate these processes that the company I work with has a lot of growth by acquisition, and so we've got a lot of disparate data. And so starting to put that together and then taking legacy processes and really turning it into something a lot faster. So that's where we're starting to see some
Yeah, which
benefit.
is the great place to start.
And it goes back to being easy to do business with. Oh,
Right.
if you don't have the inventory on the shelf and your customer can't buy it, then it's going to be real hard to grow revenue.
Yeah. And that's, and I love when you said that, but that's how simple it is, but then you've got to be able to deliver on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, within the IT team ourselves, we're trying to drink our own champagne, right? So how do we do some quick win projects again to model the behavior? Because that's something that's really, and Tom, you and I have talked about this a lot in our relationship, is it's really important to me to model the behavior that you want to see from others. You don't,
Right.
it's, so we're looking at it, hey, what can we do? We're in the middle of a project for automating and leveraging AI from a knowledge base and a solution perspective for our help desk. How can we make our level 1 help desk faster? How can we make them more efficient? And then how do we take that to the next step? I was literally just talking about this right before we got on this recording. How do we take that to the next step and have an AI tool actually go, look, we talked about it. Think about this example. Um, User puts a help desk ticket in because their phone's not working properly, right? First level is we have a knowledge base article that we've mined through the AI, and we give the help desk agent a checklist of things to go look at. Go out to this place and see if they're registered. Go out to this place to see if the provider is having an issue, right? Why not take it the next step and have an agent go do that? And then what you get as the first agent, as the first level help desk is, these are the 5 things I checked. This is the thing you need to go chase. And so we're using this concept as well. So what can we do to make ourselves more efficient? What can we do to be easier to do business with in a much smaller micro kind of climate
Mhm.
compared to how we would do it at the business level? But if we can say, hey, like, we have the same challenges, we have customers, we want to be easy to do business with. How can we apply AI and technology to do that? And so it gives us a quick win that we have full control over, and we can deliver that out and say, hey, look, it's possible. You can do it. We did it. You can do it too.
Yep.
You bring up an interesting question. Going back to the earlier part of our conversation, you mentioned being PE owned, right? There are a lot of people that are going to be listening to this that work for a company that's PE owned. That requires some nuance in terms of speaking to a board of directors that are primarily from a PE firm. If you don't mind, what are some of the lessons learned that you've had? Because it's not just with this firm, but with other firms that I've been friends for a long time, and throughout your career, you've had this experience working for PE-owned firms. Maybe if you could walk me through the nuances of a publicly held firm versus a privately held firm versus a PE firm, and kind of how to, because you mentioned a really interesting point, because you're right. If your PE firm owns a dozen companies and one of them says, hey, we've been able to see 40% decrease of this, 60% increase of that, 90% decrease of that, they're going to go to every other company that they own saying, okay, these guys have been able to do that. How come you guys haven't? So that requires a little bit of nuance. Do you mind helping us understand the nuances between a PE owned firm versus private versus public?
Yeah. I mean, I think if I had to boil it down to one thing, I think it's appetite for investment.
Mm,
So in the PE world, one of the PE companies I worked for, we talked about, you've got, so what, it's an average 5-year hold in the PE world, right? So you've got X number of weeks. And to think about what you're doing in terms of, I'm in week X of the hold. And
mm,
it really lights a fire a little bit differently
yeah.
than when you're in a privately or held or a publicly traded company, because there's usually a little more interest in the investment from a longer term perspective. And I think it's a really important distinction, especially when we're talking about big ticket investments like AI. And it's, again, all the more reason why being able to speak CFO and being able to look at the time to value for these projects and treating them like programs and treating them like building blocks is going to be way more appealing to the board, because they know that they're going to start seeing the output of the investment. It's not just your CFO that wants it, but your CFO has to defend it. So give your CFO what they need to defend that investment,
Mhm.
and you're gonna have this roadmap, and you're gonna have this pattern that you're gonna be able to demonstrate. And not only are your investors gonna be happy with that, but the next investors are going to be happy with what you've got and what the direction that you're going, and you're gonna be more likely to get that continued investment in that program.
It's a fascinating point because you hit on something really interesting, and that is defending their point of view, right? Defending their point of view against a board. I volunteer my time for a nonprofit, and more often than time not, I am facing that board of directors for that nonprofit. Truth be told, nonprofit boards are very similar to for-profit boards. They just have a different. Their goal is just a little bit different. But you bring up a fascinating point in terms of defending an argument or defending a point of view. And I'm willing to bet one of your ace cards, Gene, over the years has been delivering on, I said I'd deliver this in 60 days. Here it is in 45. Is it a monumental shift? No. But I said I would get this in 60 days. You got it in 45. So that CFO can go to the board and say, okay, when there is a slip up, which there will be,
Mhm.
they can say, look at all the successes that we've been able to give in the past in 45 days as opposed to 60. It gives that level of trust that the board has then on the CFO. Because you know this, we all know this. There's going to be slip ups, especially in AI projects and especially in the magnitude that a lot of vendors are proclaiming won't be
Mm.
results, right? There's going to be slip ups. So you bring up an interesting point in that trust is built in segments. It's not built all at once. You mind talking about perhaps in your past where that trust that was built over time helped you when there was a slip up? Because I'm willing to bet that that's happened a couple times where that you built um, those trust blocks, or what I like to call trust equity. Then that
Mhm.
has helped you when things don't go as well.
I mean, I had it happen this week. So we crossed the month and the quarter this week, and we had, it wasn't AI, but we had a deployment that didn't go so well, and it just so happened to be on the last day of the month. And because because our IT team has done so much over the past couple of years to build that trust up, that we do what we say we were going to do when we're going to do it, and we don't wait to report bad news,
Mm,
right? Like, bad news doesn't get better with time, right?
yeah, that's very, very
um,
true. It's not
That's a
like
great
wine.
thing. That's a great thing.
yeah, and so we had a snafu occur, and I had to pick up the phone, fall on the sword, and leverage the relationships that we've been able to build by executing well for when we didn't execute well. And it's a trust vault, it's a bucket. I've heard lots of people call it different things, but it's really like, it is building that integrity that if I call you and I say, "Hey, Tom, I messed up. Richard, like, I don't have good news for you this morning, but here's what happened, and here's how we're gonna fix it, and here's
Right.
who I've let know." So it's about having, I mean, I think for me, it's less about the number of times I've delivered early and more about the number of times that I've planned well enough, whether it's gone right or wrong, to be able to for my colleagues to know that when I say that this is what we're going to do, that they know that that's what's going to happen.
Right.
And I
Right.
don't get it. Like, we don't get it right every time. Um, Being humble enough to know that goes a long way as well.
Right. And with projects that I always think about the different CIOs and leaders that I talk to, and the business leadership, the executive leadership are coming at them, especially in the last year or so, with all these AI proposed AI initiatives that they're getting from other presidents or CEOs, other board members, you know, and asking the tech leaders to move the needle for them based upon input that they've received from others, which, sometimes good, sometimes, a little far-fetched. Um, when you're evaluating an automation or AI project, what are the key questions that you ask to decide whether or not it's worth pursuing?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to those first three that I mentioned before. So, what's the impact to the customer? How is this going to make us easier to do business with? Is this going to give us efficiencies? Is this going to help us increase revenue?
Right, right,
EBITDA, right?
right.
Whichever lens you want to look at it through. Hopefully both. Um, and then if you've passed those guardrails, then the next level is, do we want to buy this or build this? Is the tool like, do we have enough data to do this well? It doesn't have to be perfect,
Uh,
but how, like, am I 80% of the way there? Or am I like dealing with 16 different spreadsheets that have a rickety VLOOKUP in, right? So what's
Right, right.
oh, um, if I'm looking at buying versus building, what's the security level of it? What's the scalability? You can't not talk about cost, right?
um,
And cost isn't just about it's not just about the literal cost. It's about the time to implement. It's about the ongoing cost. It might cost me $400,000 to implement it. It may cost me $200,000 a year to run it. You're like, what is the long-term cost of it and how I'm going to do that ROI calculation? So we talk about that time to value again. So this is where it all, Richard, this is where it all fits together. All these things that we've been talking about, where it all fits back together. And um, is it going to scale with the business as your business scales?
mm,
And then being able to deliver the news based upon the facts.
Yeah.
And that is the key because, there's a lot of great ideas out there, but, again, is it going to make those three initial points that you made? Is it going to impact those 3 points? And if so, all right, let's dig in. If not, let's choose another um, opportunity that will.
Yeah.
Because
We
all
were
we
just
have is money and
talking.
time.
Yeah, and we were just talking earlier today as we're building out our governance and our, you know, steering committees and center of excellence and all the lovely buzzwords we like to talk about when we spin up AI. One of the things that we're talking about is when do you when do you investigate the make versus buy decision?
mhm,
Is it before the business case or is it after the business case? So it's a chicken and an egg thing, right? There's an there's an investment in time to make that make versus buy analysis. You can't go too far in the business case without it, but you can't go too far in the analysis without the business case. And so
Right.
we're having these conversations about is there a light approach to it? And I bring that up because I think it's important as we are putting those facts together. Like the more data that we have and the more we can tell the story with that data and those facts, the easier it is to make the decision without the emotion of it, right? We all want sexy AI tools,
mhm.
but we got to take the emotion out of that and
Right.
we've got to make sure that it's going to give us what we need.
Well said.
I like where you're going on this, Gene, because one of the things that has been a common concern is kind of polished vendor traps, right? That are really all over the place. We've heard multiple stories from different people that we've been talking to. One being is that the vendors are controlling the narrative, but we have an added component to what's going on now, and that we have Wall Street controlling the narrative as well. They're scaring CEOs saying, if you don't do this, you're going to be gone tomorrow. All white collar jobs are going to be gone in 24 days. We're hearing all sorts of very polished vendor traps. Help me understand a little bit how, as a CIO of a mid-market company, how you shield, I guess shield is probably the best way to say it, your CFO, your chief marketing officer, your CEO from the glitter, right? That's scattered on some of these pitches from reality because they're going to hear from their buddy on the golf course on the weekend say, "Hey, yeah, look at what our earnings looked like this last quarter, and it's all because of AI."
Yeah.
Dip that from reality because I'm willing to bet there's lessons that you've learned along the way in your ERP days that are repeating themselves right now.
Oh, oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, and the first thing that really comes to mind is, excuse me, making sure that you're challenging it. You've
Mm,
gotta, you can't like. Hopefully, you've built the relationship that you need to with the executive team that you have a seat at that table, first and foremost. Like, hopefully, you're not seeing that deck from from that big consulting firm after the presentation. Ideally, you're seeing it before it's presented to the CEO because you're part of the smaller group that is interfacing with that consulting team. So get yourself, like, insert yourself in. Um, and so if you can get ahead of it, then you can challenge it before it has to go in front of the CEO, right? Challenge those numbers. What is
Hmm.
that based in? What's your level of confidence in those numbers? How show me your work, right? You have to do that. And we're finding that there's 3 different groups that I've seen pitches from over the past 6 months, and they're wildly optimistic. They're
mm.
wildly
Tell me
optimistic,
about
and
that a little bit because that optimism is what the CEO and the CFO hear. They don't hear it's
yeah,
going to be this. They hear 60% of that, 90% of that, 80% of this. So tell me
yeah.
a little bit more about that if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, the way that we are counteracting that is by seeing that ahead of time so that you can say, "Hey, give me the math, show me your
Right.
work,"
Right.
and just outright forbidding them to say it that way. Like, you cannot present this. Like, we have to leave this out of this presentation, and remembering that the company is the one paying these consultants. So we do get to control the narrative to a certain amount. It is not to manipulate what's coming out of it. It is certainly not to hedge or anything along those lines, but it is to make, like, we have a duty in the seat that we're in to make sure that what is being presented is rooted in reality. And we're going to do ourselves a lot of justice if we make sure that we challenge it and push for it.
Yeah.
And maybe that manifests itself as, some concessions that occur when you get to the SOW, when you get to the point where you're executing it. Like, hey, Tom, you told me this. Richard, you told me that you were going to get me, you know, $5 million bottom line
Mhm.
with this tool. If you don't, I'm not going to pay you as much, right? Like, I'm going to
Mm.
pay you a schedule or something like that so you can bust out some negotiation tactics, things along those lines. You were going to add something, Richard.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when you're going through that, as you know the business much better than the consulting firm, or whatever partner you're using. So it it behooves the organization to have a trusted partner on the inside watching the process and factualizing the data so that when it goes to the executive team, it's a real solution. It's not just a far-fetched, or not even far-fetched, but you're within a certain parameter of reality. Because I've seen, and I've talked to individuals that, as you were just saying, you get a proposal or a presentation and it's wildly different from the actual results that are going to take place or have taken place. So I think having a trusted partner on the technology side with a seat at the table makes the organization that much more powerful, because then you're choosing the right project. You're being realistic about what the outcomes are going to be, and then you make better decisions.
Absolutely. And I love the way you put that. A trusted partner within the business. You've got to do that. You cannot, and these are hard lessons I've learned from ERP over the years. You can't just hire somebody, you can't hire a consultant and just let them run wild and accept everything that they suggest
Right.
unconditionally. You will
Mhm.
get yourself in a lot of trouble if you do that. And if you're not equipped with the right people, then if you don't have that muscle in your business, and not every business does, especially in the lower portion of the mid-market, right? Like you might not have somebody who's done this. Find a second consultant, which sounds,
Correct.
find somebody else to serve in that kind of governance role, somebody that you trust that is not from the big firm that can say like, "Hey, ask this question, ask that question."
Consider
Like
this. Yeah.
tap into your network.
Yeah.
And that can go a long way too. If you don't have somebody on staff, find somebody that you can add that's not related to the other people who are bidding.
Yeah. Yeah. Well
You
said.
you bring up an interesting point in terms of tapping your network. Because I have an interesting question that pivots off of this a little bit. There are people who are listening to this that don't have a seat at the big boy table, right? They're wanting that seat, but they haven't quite gotten it yet. So they're not getting that PowerPoint before the CEO or CFO does it. You've done an amazing job over your career, Gene, of being that person at the big boys table or big girls table or big person's table. Um, what are some of the lessons learned for perhaps that mid-market CIO that maybe they don't have they don't have the gravitas, or they don't have that seat at the big person's table? What are some lessons learned across your career that you could advise others? Because there are who are you see the IT teams is seen as a utility, really nothing more,
Yeah.
nothing less. But there's people in that team that desperately want to be seen as a value add to the organization. What are perhaps some lessons learned across your career that have given you
Yeah.
that street cred?
I think there are three that really come to mind. One of them is, have you asked?
Okay.
Right? Have you
Oh, okay.
asked to have that seat at the table? Have you shown the interest? Are you waiting around for somebody to invite you? Or are you just going in the room and claiming your spot?
Mm,
That goes a long way. And that's something that's that's scary as hell, right? Like that is scary to do that the first time, to go up to somebody and say, "Richard, I'm really interested in being part of this project. I know we haven't normally had IT at the table for this, but do you think it's something that I could be involved in?" I think that in conjunction with that, you know, if you have people in your network that already have that seat, talk to them. Just like, Tom, you're asking me about my experience with it.
mm,
So people in your network are going to be able to do that. And maybe there are
Correct.
people in your network who can connect you with other, right? Like it just goes that chain effect. So I think that's another piece. And then I think the other piece is kind of a companion to, have you asked? Have you shown that
mm.
you are earning the right to be at that table,
Isn't that
right?
important? That's
What
you're right on.
are you talking about, the things that you're getting done? Are you talking about the cool things that you did? Are you talking about the way that you helped Sally in the credit department do something better? Are you evangelizing what you and your team are doing? Because if you're not, then you'll never be looked at as
Right.
more than a utility. You've got to show what your value is, and you've got to talk about it. And if you're not comfortable talking about all the things you and your team have done, you better get comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think to this point, one of the themes we've been hearing from others is the change in mindset of your CIO as a service to the organization, from that mindset to an advisor to the organization and being much more strategic. Um, One of my favorite CIOs has got this test that he has in terms of any project that he works on in his enterprise. It's a very, very, very large company, and he calls it the Wall Street Journal test. And he looks across his IT team, marketing team, sales, biz dev team, and basically asks this question: how many people in here subscribe to the Wall Street Journal? You don't need to read it every day, but how many subscribers are there? And he asked for raised hands. And he says, those inevitably are the people that I'm going to tap first in terms of becoming in this project or this project or this project or this project, because they have a much wider angle lens in terms of what's really going on, not just in our business, but our business segment, not just from an IT standpoint, but from the CIO and journal aspect of the Wall Street Journal. What are the big topics of concern, whether it be in security, whether it be in ERP, whether it be in distribution and shop floor tools and things like that. And it's almost
Yeah.
like that cred is what's going to get you at that big person's table. Like you said, talking about what's happening, right? Tapping your network. And I think this is so very important now more than any other time is what's your network like? Not your deal friends, but your real friends, people that you can
Yeah.
have that heart to heart conversation of, hey, I'm having this problem with my CFO or my chief operating officer or my chief marketing officer. He's blocking me from this. How would you handle it? And I'm willing to bet that network has probably helped you too.
It has. It has. And I like that Wall Street Journal subscription idea. And what I would add to that is maybe what I'll call my number 4 then way to get at the table, which is if I am the subscriber to the Wall Street Journal and I am reading these articles, not literally Wall Street Journal, but I'm reading articles, I'm reading books, I'm listening to podcasts, and something strikes me as, oh, I bet my VP of marketing that would resonate with them. I share it. I share it with them. They may or may not read it. That's not my problem.
Right.
Like, but I share it. And so that starts to show them that I'm thinking about things that are beyond IT,
Mm,
that I'm thinking about things that impact our industry, that impact their function, and that there's more to me than just making sure that the servers are running.
Yeah.
Right. So you've you've got to show your value. You've got to do it and share it and be loud about it.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
If people don't
That's
like it, then they don't like it. They don't have to.
yeah,
Yeah, that's straight on because you've got to do the blocking and tackling to take care of the day-to-day issues that build your credibility consistently. But then you also have to be regional and global in regards to your industry so that you can see around some of those corners and help your organization become the best that it can be, become the easiest of use for your customers, have that product on the table ready to go, and that's by having a holistic view. And you know, as Tom was saying, to go from a service organization to a advisor, that's the leap that's taking place now. And the ones that do that correctly are the ones that not only get a seat at the table, but get the credibility. And ultimately, I've seen, and Tom and I were talking about this a while back. I've seen a couple CIOs now move into the CEO roles just
yeah,
because they've got their pulse on the business more so than just about anybody in the org.
It's absolutely correct. The company I was at before this, we had that exact thing happen. Um, our CIO had really done a great job, and I learned so much from him about opening up that span of knowledge. And you're doing the work anyway, so
Right.
why not let people know that you're doing the work? And he did end up stepping into the CEO role, um, and and I think it does say a lot about that evolution of utility to advisor, the evolution of, you know, CIOs that are coming up through the applications track because there is such a tighter connection to the business and a better,
Right.
just more natural understanding of what's going on.
Absolutely.
And it does really pave the path for there to be a legitimate way to go from CIO to CEO if that is something that you want to do. It's legitimate, and it is not, they're not anomalies anymore. They were, but they're not
Right.
anomalies anymore. I can think of at least 5 mainstream publication articles that I've read about it before.
Yeah, and then
So
then it's
it's
so great
interesting.
for the staff your staff to know, hey, you know what? It's not just a straight tech career path. It's a business path. It's an organizational path, which then hopefully brings sharper minds into this segment, and ultimately, moves the needle for organizations as leaders.
Yeah. I mean, for a long time, large companies have high potential employees cycle through different departments,
Right.
Mm,
right? Spend some time in operations, spend some time in procurement, et cetera. It's never been spend some time in IT.
mm,
Why not? Right. And so we're reaching a point now where that that kind of cycle will include IT, it will include analytics, it'll include AI, and it really makes the career paths more exciting. And I think it's going to
Yeah.
be a way that we can talk to our young people about, like, it's not just about fixing computers anymore. There's so
Right.
much more to it, and there's so many things to be excited about. Keep your mind open,
mm.
and you'll
Yeah.
have a long way to go.
Right. Right.
Fantastic. Um, Gene, first off, I really wanted to thank you for this. Thank you for your time here today. I know we scheduled 90 minutes, but I wanted to kind of, give us enough time in case there were other things that you wanted to bring up that you think would be particularly helpful. Looking back in your career and looking where you are now, the Gene that I knew, 10 or, 10 years ago is different than the Gene now. And there's a lot of things that you've learned along that way. So I wanted to make sure we gave enough time for you to kind of add any additional insights that you have in terms of, you did a really cool job in terms of if you're a mid-market CIO that isn't in that big table, here's what you probably should do. Um, it's how to look at IT more strategically as opposed to a utility. But there's yeah, if you wanted for these next few minutes, if you want to kind of talk about other lessons learned from your successes in the past that have laid those seeds of okay, you can trust me with this because this, and this. And sometimes those seeds weren't big, but they were, hey, I promised this to you in 60 days, I got it to you in 40. Yeah. So there's other comments you wanted to add that you think might be particularly helpful to that mid-market CIO that's going to be listening to this thinking, boy, there's a lot of things I want to do, but I'm just not there yet.
Yeah. I I a couple of things come to mind. I think first, and I will always make this recommendation to somebody at any point in their career, is to find a good coach, find and not a mentor necessarily. Mentors are important. There's a place for mentors. I like the coaching model, and I think it's, find a good coach. The first person that you talk to might not be your best coach option. The coach that you use today may not be the best coach for tomorrow, but that person is going to have this completely neutral way to look at it.
Yep.
Your mentors, your network, they're not going to be as neutral as a coach is going to be. And so if you're struggling to get that seat at the table, or if you're struggling with a relationship between you and another peer, or anybody within your work network, that's going to be invaluable. If you've got certain areas that you need to work on, finding a good coach to help push you on that is essential, right? So that's the worst thing I'd say, and I'll always evangelize that. Um, I think the second thing, and it goes back to the speaking CFO that we talked about earlier, is understand where the company that you're working at is right now. Sometimes you're in a season where you're worried about cash. Sometimes you're in
Hmm.
a season where you're looking at EBITDA. You have to be in tune with that cycle. And so if you're not talking to your CFO, or you're not talking to your FP&A team, you need to start.
That's a great
If
point, Gene.
Like, you have to understand it. You have to understand where you're at. So that way you can talk about it in the terms of, hey, I need to spend this much money, and it's about when I'm going to lay the cash out, or it's about, does it fall above the line or below the line?
Mhm.
And what I would add to that is, when you're talking about that and you're thinking about resources and how you never have enough resources, because we never have enough resources, thinking about what season the company that you're working at is in, and understanding, hey, maybe I go out for this. Maybe I go and do an engagement. Maybe I staff augment. Maybe I bring in consultants because I can package this up in a way that I can keep those costs below the line. Maybe we're okay on cash, but we're really focused on being powerful in our EBITDA. Maybe we're getting close to the end of our hold and we need to make sure we look really, really good. I can get more projects done if I can keep that below the line. So if I know that I can get the funding, but I can't put it above the line, meaning it has to, like, it's a project that I can capitalize. It's a project that I can, if you're in a company that is going through, that has add backs or those one-time business costs that they can categorize that way, I can keep that below the line so it still it preserves my EBITDA. And if you can talk in terms of that, you're going to blow the socks off of your CFO because that's how they're thinking about it.
Mm.
And that's how you flex your team up.
I want you to repeat that because what you just said there is so very vital. Could you repeat that just in case anyone listening to this didn't hear
Yeah.
that? Because blowing the socks off your CFO in that kind of language is so very
Yeah.
important.
It is, right. Yeah, I'll say it again for the back of the room. Understand what season you're in. Are you protecting cash or are you protecting your EBITDA margins? Because if you know that, then you can package your projects, you can package your requests up in a way that is going to speak to what your CFO needs today,
Especially if they're PE owned. Because like you said, if you're at the end of
especially
your
as a PE.
hold, that 5-year stretch, these are the projects that are going to generate attention. These aren't. And I think so often there are people in that CIO spot that are in that service mindset, right? Where they
Hmm.
hear marketing say, we need to do this. So then they go to the
Okay, we'll
CFO
do
saying,
it.
we need to do this, but they don't understand, wait a second, that project isn't going to get funded because we're at this stage in the cycle.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're not, you, if you haven't changed the way you think about it, this is my plea to you to do so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that gives you credibility at the table, and that's the only way you stay at the table.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not at the table because you're IT. You're
Yeah,
at the table because you're a business person who
right,
understands technology
right.
and you've got to shift your mindset. So find that maybe you don't want to talk to your CFO about it. I understand CFOs can be intimidating. Go find somebody on your finance team. Go talk to your controller. Go find your friendly in the finance accounting team and have them help you understand. If you don't understand a word that I just said about above the line and below the line, go learn it
Yeah,
because it will help you speak CFO.
Gotcha.
well said.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gene, this has
Yeah.
been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate this. And thanks for taking this time out of a Friday afternoon to kind of walk us through this. Any parting comments, Gene? And then Richard, any parting questions that you might have? Um, anything anyone wants to add? Feel free.
No, Gene, I
Yeah.
just want to thank you. It was really insightful. I learned a lot. And the way that you communicate your ideas are really effective, and I can see why you are where you are in your career.
Thank you very much. No, gents, it's really been a pleasure to speak to you. I really enjoy talking about this and helping CIOs grow into the people sitting at that table is something that's really important to me. And so I feel really privileged to have this conversation with you guys today.
Great.
Excellent.